Well, finding the Antikythera device is pretty darn close to finding a cell phone in a Viking burial.
Apparently there's some speculation some parts might be missing, or
A magnum opus like this does not appear suddenly.
he just looks up at the skies and screams out at the top of his lungs.
5 degrees from Catoctin B camp.
And some of them are very hotly
They're
debated.
really hotly debated.
Very hotly debated.
So myth in some cases does indeed reflect some aspects of reality. Welcome to Into the Unknown with Mike and John, Season 3, Episode 5-ish. 5-ish. Yes. This time, John and I discuss that famous, ancient, prochronistic OOPART, the Antikythera Device, pulled from the depths of the Aegean. I must say, Eimai, enthusiasmenos. And if that all sounds Greek to you, you are correct. I'm Mike Duber.
And I'm really impressed that you were able to pronounce that Greek. And still John Fitzpatrick.
Thank you.
Very good.
It took
very good.
Took a couple tries.
That's
only you know.
You did that. You did that cold.
I did it.
You
cold.
were amazing.
Of course I did.
I'm over here just little heart beating so fast.
Being very nice today, John. You're in a good mood, and that's good.
I am trying to be. Yes.
Eimai, enthusiasmenos. So what does that mean? Do you know?
I have no clue.
It's quite okay. It means I'm excited.
Oh, I'm excited too.
I must say, Eimai,
Okay.
enthusiasmenos.
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully, anybody that understands Greek will maybe write us a note and say you're butchering my language.
Totally wrong. That's okay. When we started, I said we're going to slaughter this thing,
Yeah,
and we probably will slaughter something.
We're already splattered with gore. All right.
Okay.
Well, let's dig in. I mean, we picked a fun one today. I picked a fun one. This was one I added to the backlog, and I think we're going to have fun. So let's unpack this thing.
You've been busy lately, and I really appreciate that. But
Yeah,
you've been so enthusiasmenos about all of our work this third season. So
Awesome.
okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Enthusiasmenos.
Yeah, right back at you, bro. Great. All right. So let's unpack that opening. OOPART. OOPART. What am I saying? OOPART. Okay,
OOPART.
so that's OOPART. And in the script, it has an exclamation point. Now, I wonder how many listeners are confused by that one. Probably not too many. If you listen to these podcasts, now let's unpack it. First of all, an OOPART is an out-of-place artifact. OOPART, out-of-place artifact. Now, this is something that exists in a context where it really shouldn't. They are archaeological anomalies, and more accurately, they are something discovered that no one was really expecting. Now, here's a made-up example. Finding a cell phone buried next to a Viking sword in undisturbed soil that dates to 900 AD. That would be quite an anomaly.
And that's why it's fictional. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is fictional.
Yeah.
No one is saying that's true.
Yeah. I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah, let's not. Yeah, I don't want to spread any. We don't want to create any tulpas.
we
and we
do
don't
not
want to tell any lies.
Want to create any stories yet?
No, not yet. Yeah, unless we design it.
Not yet. Right.
Right. Well, finding the Antikythera device is pretty darn close to finding a cell phone in a Viking burial of a sort. We're going to dig in. So let's explain why. And start by describing the Antikythera device. And you're probably going to hear me say it a couple of different ways, and that's okay.
Yeah, I keep calling it the Antikythera, but you say it's Antikythera.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sure to screw that up later.
It could be
Antikythera. Okay.
And yeah. And so
Now, this is something everybody's seen, though. Haven't they? Most people, anyway.
A lot of people would have seen this. It's pretty.
You know where I'm going. This was the MacGuffin in the last Indiana Jones movie.
Good. Okay.
Now,
You're putting that in right at the front. That's
I'm
fine.
putting it right in the front. We don't have to
do it.
describe it now, but I'm going to mention it right now. You have probably seen this thing if you saw the last Indiana Jones movie. And you're going to find out as we just, this is why I don't really want to discuss it now. Whatever you thought from the movie, it's not that. It just looks the same, sort of.
Yeah. Now, is this, it's the dial that he's
Yes, it is
discussing.
the dial of destiny.
I saw it, and I don't even remember. And I, frankly, I may have to go back and look at it again. I don't remember it being a horrible movie.
No, the best part was the first 20 minutes or so where they've got him running around in 1944 Germany.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he's out there
He's
out there using his Catoctin B training.
That's right.
As an OSS colonel, beating up Nazis.
Fresh from the House of Horrors.
Fresh from the house. I'm sure he passed with flying colors.
I'll bet.
He was exactly the guy they were looking for, that PhD who can win a bar fight.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, with all that great imagery, just imagine Indiana Jones, sitting in with maybe a scotch or a bourbon and looking at this thing in his study and trying to figure out what the hell is this. Maybe that'll help you move through the episode. All right, so we're going to dive into some description and function, so let's go. So if I told you that people living in the Mediterranean around 200 to 50 BC were capable of building a mechanism with the precision of a grandfather clock that could accurately predict positions of celestial bodies, you would call me crazy. Maybe. But that is exactly what the Antikythera Device is. It is basically an analog computer. Now, packaged in a relatively small space, this precision instrument was contained in a wooden box about 13 by 7 inches and about 3.5 inches thick. It was phone book sized.
What's a phone book?
I threw that in to throw off the Gen Zs.
Yeah, half our audience is like, what?
Yes.
It's a phone book.
To the Googles.
Yeah.
How quaint. A book containing every phone number. Yes.
In your area.
Yeah, in your area.
Just in your area, and it was huge.
Yep. Yes, folks, we remember that. And the first PCs, thinking of computers.
Yep.
In the 80s, my dad, who worked for IBM for 36 years, brought home the first IBM PC. That was in 1980.
Wow.
Amazing. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. We had one on the dining room table starting in the 80s. 1980 specifically. Okay, so back to the Antikythera Device. Now, the device has two faces. Think of a clock face, a front and a back, and a hand crank to activate the mechanism. Now, here is a very practical description of the user interface. I'm going to ask John to step in here.
On the front face of the mechanism, there is a fixed ring dial representing the ecliptic, or ecliptic plane, the 12 zodiacal signs marked off with equal 30-degree sectors. This matched with the Babylonian custom of assigning 1/12 of the ecliptic to each zodiac sign equally, even though the constellation boundaries were variable. Outside that dial is another ring which is rotatable, marked off with the months and days of the Sothic Egyptian calendar, 12 months of 30 days, plus 5 intercalary days. The months are marked with the Egyptian names for the months transcribed into the Greek alphabet. The first task is to rotate the Egyptian calendar ring to match the current zodiac points. The Egyptian calendar ignored leap days, so it advanced through a full zodiac sign in about 120 years. On the back of the mechanism, there are 5 dials. The 2 large displays, the Metonic, the 19th year lunar recurrence.
And you can step over that.
I'm going to step right over the Antikythera.
Yeah.
Antikythera.
Close enough.
Yeah, that is pretty. Okay.
That's a rough one.
Whew, thanks. Thanks for the warning.
I
Did you learn your lesson
there was
the
another
last
one.
time?
I told you it was in there.
Okay.
Antikythera.
Antikythera.
Yeah.
And I feel like we ought to pin just Aeneid. I think that
It is. It stands for 19 years.
Yeah, I think that's something else in Egyptian too. Aeneid. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, where was I? Let me go back to the top of this paragraph.
Yeah,
on the back of the mechanism, there are 5 dials, the 2 large displays, the Metonic, that's the 19th year lunar recurrence, or Antikythera, and the Saros, a Chaldean periodicity, or beat. And 3 smaller indicators, the so-called Olympiad dial, which has been renamed the Games dial, as it did not track Olympiad years, which is the 4-year cycle it tracks most closely, is actually the Haliad games. Mm-hmm. Okay. The Kalypic and the Exeligmos.
Exeligmos. Yeah,
Well,
I was just, yeah. So,
Exeligmos. Yes, that's what it says. Yes, I'm sorry. I added a vowel in there somewhere.
Yeah, these are, they're not, these are not.
We are professionals, but did we run through the script once before recording it?
No. It's a big negatory. That's okay.
That's because we're pressed on the production.
Morning.
Yeah, that's okay. Don't have to say that, but we are pressed on the production schedule this time because of all the weather and life events. But it's fun. We're here. We're here for our listeners, both of you.
Well, no, this was been cooking for a while too, but I pieced all the parts together. Okay.
So that's the description of the device.
That's the description of the faces, and all those words like the Saros, the Chaldean periodicity or beat. Those are just time scales, and these are. Well, we're going to get to it.
Yeah, they're different from what we use today, but they were contemporary to the period this was created.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, it would be like saying, the way a calendar is broken down. A lot of these are lunar cycles. A lot of these are trying to count different recurring cycles. So that's what you should take away from that.
And knowing what's coming, I can already see some of the difficulties of trying to jive all of this together, synchronize it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. When we started, I feel like I'm successfully poked at all the little nuances of this.
Okay.
Now, purportedly, the device worked by first setting the device of the current known month to the zodiac, then turning the hand crank to set the gears in motion. Now, the multiple dials and indicators on each face would rotate in concert and calculate the placement of the body of interest, including the sun and the moon phase, eclipses, and calendar cycles, and perhaps, and I say this is debated, the locations of the 5 known planets. So they're not entirely, meaning researchers writ large, are not entirely certain that they were trying to track the known planets, although, some folks are making arguments for and against it.
I don't know if this is coming later, but apparently there's some speculation some parts might be missing or they might not be cataloged correctly or...
Well, and you'll see that,
that's why they think that.
There are, we'll get into that a little bit, but that's right, that there could be pieces missing. Of all the pieces they have, there are like 5 major parts and it's not... There is no 100% clarity on how this actually goes together.
Right.
And that's sort of a spoiler.
And there's some speculation that there's some missing space. So it's also, I haven't seen this pushed forefront, but there's some speculation that this device might have left out those 5 planets, but some prototypical device or other device might have had them, but that's what the missing space is from.
Yeah,
but that's not a mainstream big theory. I've just seen that reference. Like that's why they don't know.
Yeah. Yep. That's cool. I didn't run into that.
Yeah. Like I said, I read some of the more recent ones, but there's a lot of as much as they know and as much as they seem to have known since the first time I encountered this idea. There's still a lot of mystery around it.
Yeah, there's a lot of wiggle room in here, and we're going to kind of touch on some of that. Okay, so in case this is not landing as we intend, I just want to point out, this is amazing. This is amazing. This is what makes this device so special. It is tracking the sun and the moon phase, eclipse, and calendar cycles. And maybe not, it's tracking the known planets. Okay, this is amazing. I just want you to keep that in mind. Now, so much is written, as John is alluding to, so much is written on the mathematics, the calendars, the gearing, and the theories of celestial movements the device attempts to model. And frankly, however highly informative, it is heavy and detailed and not necessary to wring out the most interesting parts of this story. So we're going to spare you like the gearing size, the teeth size. I mean, there's really a lot of detail, as you might imagine. Now, it's all in the links we provide in the show notes if you want those details. Now, what is interesting, because it resonates with our previous episodes, is that Greek, Egyptian, Babylonian, and other ancient contemporary cosmologies and celestial timing methods are accounted for. Now, it's almost like the astronomical Rosetta Stone. People trying to build bridges between philosophical systems, or bringing it all together, or at a minimum, allow a traveler to ask the time in the Mediterranean and have a chance of having it make sense in their worldview. Maybe it's like a big clock. Now, there was probably some aid to navigation as well, since it was found on a ship. It even was geared to predict the timing of the Olympic Games, which we got from that description. Now, even in those days, sports ball was important, John. Some things never change.
Yeah, well, but
gotta know when those games are.
I'm trying to remember if any of the Greek festival games had a ball. I mean, there was running, there was track and field.
Yeah.
There was wrestling, boxing. There was even mixed martial arts.
Mm-hmm. Wrestling.
I don't remember. I don't recall anything
any games, but
having a ball.
But I was just saying, sports ball was is ours.
Yeah,
ours. The yearly ritual of the NFL.
And I'll just note that
as an example, and also like FIFA.
Yeah. As we record this, we've got the Super Bowl tomorrow, and the Winter Olympics just started. Yeah, as I reminded myself again, going to the grocery store this morning and realizing all the chips were sold out
and all the man dip fixings.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
that's the only way I keep track of this.
I'm a little distracted because I've had my head down writing scripts and editing.
I got no plans for Super Bowl. None.
Yeah. Well, you could make some dip and try and find it on TV.
Nope, that's okay.
Okay,
we'll watch some.
All right. Well, I gave you assignments earlier, so
yes, you did. My wife's got other assignments.
That's right.
We're working our way through Ken Burns' country music.
Oh.
It's good, actually. It's really good.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good. I would hope that would be a lot of good music to listen to.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So now, John, is your favorite.
Ooh,
it's your favorite
history.
Now for a little history.
I'm excited.
All right, here we go. In 1901, the device was recovered from the wreck of a Roman cargo ship off the coast of the Greek island Antikythera in the Aegean Sea. Now, although heavily encrusted, some of its gears were partially visible. Now, immediately they suspected it was some type of astronomical calendar or orrery.
Orrery. I'm going to say that again. Orrery. Because I could not say that before we started. That was the one thing we did try to practice because I said it and I was like, that's not right, is it?
Yeah.
You corrected me. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those words that if you got it wrong, practiced wrong, it's hard to undo it. But at that time, it was considered prochronistic as opposed to anachronistic. Prochronistic is it's out of place or too complex to have been constructed during the same period as the other pieces that had been discovered in the wreck. So there were some pretty typical things. There were actually, if I recall, this ship had quite a haul.
Yeah, it's treasure laden
of like art, statuary and very fine statuary.
The account I read said something about the initial diver. I think they were
sponge divers.
Sponge divers. That's right.
Sponge divers.
Yeah, they were sponge divers.
Yeah, they were working with the Greek Navy.
Yeah. Yes.
Later on.
The account I read was that the sponge diver went down and came back up and said that he discovered a field of bodies, and some of they have found human remains down there. I think the implication was that it was the statues that were found that he saw them sticking the arms and hands up into the depths of the field. So they went back down, and two of them now, and they realized what they had was discovered this wreck.
Yeah.
And then later they did do some initial pulling of artifacts to see what was there, and then called in the Greek Navy for assistance because they wanted a more systematic way of going about this. Although we're still talking the very early days of archaeology here.
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah. I mean, and so it certainly, early days, but nonetheless, despite that, it was very clear And we're going to get into this later, sort of the bona fides of this artifact, this sort of rock solid, bulletproof.
Yes, it's found within a rock solid context here.
Yeah, very easily dateable. But just real quick about the wreck. I mean, we're not talking like a boat full of amphorae with olive oil or wine. This ship especially seemed laden again with a lot of treasures, very unique
true
artifacts.
Yeah,
I mean, very distinct and unique things. Anyway, so they had an idea of what it was that they had pulled off the bottom. Again, they could see some gearing, so they figured it might be something like that. And so the suspicion was laid at that point. Now, in 1902, not long after it was brought off the bottom, it was inspected by an archaeologist, Valerios Stais, together with his cousin, the Greek politician Spiridon Stais, but not much came of their inquiry, and that's where things lulled.
Yeah, so everything goes into storage.
Yeah.
It goes into a cataloged, not library, museum collection at that point.
Yeah. Now, again, we say the interest in the device lulled until 1951, when British science historian and Yale University professor Derek J. de Sala Price turned his attention to it. Now, in 1971, Price and Greek nuclear physicist Charalampos Karakalos, there you go. Karakalos made X-ray and gamma ray images of the 82 fragments that they had. Now, there's an indicator, right? They had 82 fragments. Now, this part of that could have included certainly the box it was found with, right?
Yeah, this is.
But like the main core of the actual innards of the device, it was, if I want to recall, there's about 8 solid devices.
Right. I think there are 3 big chunks.
Yes.
Then another 5 that are good sized. They fit in with the big, and then there are these remaining of the 82 that are much smaller pieces found in the same context and associated with this device.
Right.
And they still think there may be some missing. There may be some still down on the bottom of the Aegean. And it's possible that there are some that have not been identified as associated with the device, but cataloged in the collection with the rest. So, I mean, that's why there's still some speculation about missing pieces. They may be missing completely. They may just be missing from the record as solidly associated with this.
Right. I mean, they could have just disintegrated.
Also true.
Before it was encrusted with the concretions. And so for anybody thinking about this, or maybe is not familiar with what comes off the ocean floor, metal objects concrete with crustacean around it, so it's not always readily apparent what you're looking at. So
and they can corrode.
They corrode. I mean, there's just a lot that's obfuscating the parts.
Yeah, so I think the 3 big pieces were corroded together initially.
Yeah.
That's why the X-ray, gamma ray, and I think there are some other more modern things that may be coming. I don't remember. Yeah. They will.
It allows for we talked about
a view.
Yeah,
it allows a better.
It allows it for you to sort of view it in
I'll
depth.
let you keep going then. I'm sorry.
And that helps. No, that's all good. Well, anyway, I mean, these X-rays and gamma rays in the 70s opened the floodgates, and now with a clear view of the bronze gears inside, you can see teeth size and shape. You can see the approximate layered order of the gears. You can see their relative sizes and be able to take measurements. And with the visible Greek inscriptions, that's a great boon as well. You can tell exactly what that particular gear is supposed to be looking at or calculating. And here's where serious investigation began. Now, in fact, recreations of the device were made. De Sala made a simple one in 71, but much later in 2002, Michael Wright built the first fully functional model. And be careful here, and I'm being careful in telling you why I'm being careful, because we're calling it a functional model in that it functioned. But as you'll see in a little bit, you'll see that, the true, there's not 100% confidence on how it was fully put together, and there's speculation. And let's do that right now. Now, despite the detailed views into the concretion, separate gearing proposals were developed and presented to explain the device's purposes. It still wasn't exactly clear how it all truly fit together. We've said that. And as we will see, there are some challenges to being 100% confident. Now, all of them are probably very close, but some details stand in the way. After all, there are 18 separate gears, with some being discovered at different times as these theories were coming together, and we've alluded to a lot of that. Again, I want to point out, there is no doubt this is amazing, and it's an astronomical computer, and it's and we're going to get into the dating. So how old is this thing? Now, the era when this device existed is the Hellenistic period, approximately 325 to 30 BC. The shipwreck where the artifact was discovered was confidently dated between 70 and 60 BC. Now, to be clear, there is little doubt about the age of the wreck, and that the device was found within its midst. Now, not all great evidence is so lucky. Now, logically, the device was created before the wreck, right? That's just logical. And it has been dated between 205 and 87 BC, somewhere in there. So that's like the speculation on the evidence for the device itself has separate dating. Now, ultimately, it is believed the device was constructed by Hellenistic scientists. That's, I guess, an accurate word, but it's just those in the Hellenistic society. And various dates for these are proposed. 87 BC, between 150 and 100 BC, and 205 BC. We also don't know much about the lead-up time to the device itself. And what I mean to say is, a magnum opus like this does not appear suddenly out of thin air. There is a build-up time, often across generations, of technological development, skill development, theory development, practice, and failures to put something like this together. Now, so far, this device is the anomaly, but it is suggested by the researchers that many others of this type probably existed, but were lost to time and to the forge, where metal is often reclaimed.
Yes, that's a frequent case is that metal gets reused, melted down, and reused or whatnot.
Yep. Especially if the mechanism jams up. Piece of junk. We'll just recycle it.
Well, yeah. We haven't gotten to that part yet.
But
I'm sure we will talk about
setting the stage
possibility too. Yes.
Yeah. Now, another observation here for historical context is machines of this complexity did not appear again in the historical record until the 14th century in Western Europe. So this is a glimpse of just how far ahead of time this object is. So let's move on to the device itself and its accuracy. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Now, it is so amazing, but is it accurate? Well, no.
No.
It's not.
No.
But not from a lack of effort.
No. I think we're gonna if we're gonna talk about some manufacturing and okay. I'll wait. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get it. And then you can see whatever nuance you want to bring in. The Antikythera Device. Now, if we accept a continuity of time theory, no time travel.
And that's what it was. That's what it was in Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
It was a time travel tracker. Yeah. Here's the rip in time. Go through it.
Yeah. Now,
let me bring this back to you. Now you've created it, and I'm handing you a complete copy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. Okay.
We'll just go with the continuity of time. How we mostly apprehend time. It could only be built with the given theories of the day. Now, and they were advanced, but the theories were incomplete. So codifying certain measures and theories into a mechanistic device will not produce accurate results against observed reality. In fact, this is my speculation, they may have even been aware, perhaps much more so after having created the model, that they were off somewhere, that their calculations were incorrect. And such is progress. Now, it might have been that the model was helping them move through their theories and refine them. And
Yeah,
also remember,
it would call out those inaccuracies, and you'd say, well,
yeah, it's like, well, I turned the dial, and I should look up and see Mars, and it's all the way over there.
It's
crap.
off. It's off by a couple of degrees.
Yeah,
but,
or a
it's
lot.
close enough for government work.
Yeah.
Close enough for Spartan work.
The Greek government, they contracted for this thing, and they're like, yeah, it's fine.
It's close enough.
That's fine. So remember, I love this quote, and I use it all the time, especially in my other life. All models are wrong. Some are useful. Mm-hmm. All right. And that seems to stand true here. Now, further, using updates made in theory from a few. Let me start over because I'm marble mouthing. Further, using updates made in theory from a few short centuries later in 160 AD, when, say, Ptolemy published the Almagest.
Really? You were able to,
easy.
You were able to say some of these other words.
My rhythm was off.
Almagest was...
Almagest.
Is it Almagest or Almagest?
Almagest. I don't know. Is it a hard G or soft G?
Who knows?
Let's go with a hard G. Almagest. Now, in the Almagest, as written by Ptolemy, and he published it, it further details complex planetary orbital paths. Specifically, the equant is what he's added to the picture. The device would have been vastly improved. So again, what we're saying here is at the time, around 0 AD or so, right? The theories such as they were built into the device, and if they had waited a couple of centuries, it might have been improved. Now there is a short quote here. Let's go for that. Yeah.
In short, the Antikythera mechanism was a machine designed to predict celestial phenomena according to the sophisticated astronomical theories current in its day. The sole witness to a lost history of brilliant engineering, a conception of pure genius, one of the great wonders of the ancient world. But it didn't really work very well.
Yeah.
It worked...
Probably close-in calculations, but we're going to get to that too. And we make sure we nail that.
Okay.
Because I wrote to it, but make sure you underscore it. All right. So, not only did their theories, such as they were, work against them, but craftsmanship as well. Craftsmanship. As amazing as this device is, the handmade gears created just enough engineering intolerance to throw off precision, especially the more you turned the crank. Now, in effect, inaccuracies get multiplied the further out the calculation.
Yeah. Okay. So
think about that.
That I think suggests a number of interesting things. Some we've already brought up, such as where are these other devices? Well, if it's time-consuming, hard work, and expensive to hand make these gears, you probably reuse gears wherever you can. So if there were previous devices of this nature, maybe they get cannibalized to build the next generation as a shortcut. Because people are lazy.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. No, that's I didn't think of that little nuance. That's exactly right.
And I'm suggesting that. I didn't read that anywhere, but it has popped to mind here as one reason why, because we already suggested you might reuse the metal. Well,
this is the nature of prototyping.
Right. Why wouldn't you reuse the gear?
Exactly.
If you could.
And whatever the handle.
And right.
The crank itself. It's like just a crank, right?
Right. Especially if we're talking about prototyping. If this is the 5th generation of the device, but we're keeping the parts that worked and trashing the rest in order to speed up that process.
It's the fail-fast process.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, man, that doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
Or this is binding. We'll get, we might get to that.
And then we're going to point out that engineering intolerance. These are handmade gears.
Yeah.
Can you imagine trying to grind out with precision a gear,
which has to, by its very function, it has to be precise.
That's
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, in every tooth, the same size.
Right.
It has to mesh with the other gear
in the same
way
gear,
at each tooth.
Yeah. And that's why we were talking before briefly, and I brought up, I read one article that said this thing probably jammed simply because they didn't fit correctly. So that's a theory that's out there.
It was imperfect.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why this doesn't show up. Here's the other thing. Why doesn't this continue to show up between 1 AD and the 14th century? Why is there more than 1,000 years?
That's a good question.
Partly it might be that you don't have a society that has the leisure time to build such a thing of this nature. How much? I mean, certainly there's. You could question, well, why doesn't this reappear during the Roman era, which is running from BC to roughly 500 AD, because they should have the leisure time, but they're not necessarily focused on this, where the Greeks were more interested in this kind of thing.
And
but after that, it's the Dark Ages and war.
Well, so there's the other aspect that I was going to ping upon, because it will serve me later, will serve us later, but there is also the idea, and I don't want to dig in too much because it's really the oomph of another episode, but there is speculation that there is actually a dimming of intelligence as we move through time into the Dark Ages as well. So it's not just that
That's a pin.
No, that's a pin. But
I'm not sure I'm ready for that one.
Yeah,
but okay.
Well, there's a dimming of intelligence. Well, we could look at just the Egyptian culture itself that would use lead eating implements.
Oh,
so
yeah.
There's a practical aspect of it, but there is another aspect that will probably hurt your brain. So we'll talk about it.
Well, the Romans used lead pipes to put in their drinking water.
So there's that, but there are other theories that look at the cycles of time and sort of a dimming and brightening of intelligence as we move through time. But that one's more controversial, as you can sense from John. But we're going to close up with that. We'll get there. I had, as we interrupted the script, and that's fine.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. But I'm just going back one step to say the concept of how inaccuracies get multiplied. Think of the concept of aiming your spacecraft at Mars and being off in your targeting by 1/10 of an arc second. Now, that seems like a small difference, but as you go, that small inaccuracy accumulates, and over millions of miles, you will miss your planet by thousands of miles. So, just keep that in mind as a concept of the accumulation of inaccuracy. Now, before you go thinking the ancients were incompetent or scrubs, we suffer these same issues today in modern engineering.
Yep.
Inaccuracies, faulty theories, and mistakes are extant and costly. Let's take this example. On September 23rd, 1999, NASA's Mars Climate Orbiter, this is a $125 million spacecraft, was lost after a 286-day journey. It seems the product teams did not coordinate English versus metric units on thruster values, and oops. They were short 2.2 million pounds of thrust over the whole journey, and it is believed the crispy craft was burned against the atmosphere and is now orbiting the sun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's just a matter of team communication.
Yeah.
Not the I guess we'll just say the one team put forward the English pounds, and I have it on another page, but and then the other team was using metric.
That's funny.
And they completely missed that in their calculations.
I'm gonna riff, but it brings to mind the opening scene to the series Rogue Heroes. Okay. In which Lieutenant David Sterling is driving at the head of this column. It's World War II. The British are trying to relieve a besieged army in North Africa, and Sterling looks down at his fuel gauge and he realizes we're almost out of fuel here. So he halts the column. He goes back a few trucks to talk to the commander of this column. And he says, "Sir, it's time to bring up the gas refueling trucks." And the commander looks at him and he says, we didn't bring any because we were, supposed to relieve the force pronto, quick, expediently. And I just realized that we calculated the fuel in these trucks in miles, and our maps are reading kilometers.
Yes,
and
yes.
we're not
We're
right.
short.
We're not right. We have no refueling trucks, and we're not going to make it to Torbrook or whatever it was.
That's interesting. Yeah,
yeah, and
it happens.
But there's this great. Sterling walks away, and this is truly, it's the cold open of the show. He walks away, and he's walking back to his truck, and everybody's looking at him, and he's just walking, and you can see the rage building in his face. And he gets to his truck, and before he reaches the door, he just looks up at the skies and screams out at the top of his lungs, and then the AC/DC, anachronistic AC/DC music starts, and it's just hilarious. And it's a favorite meme of mine.
Nice.
That's why it comes to mind.
What's the show?
It's called Rogue Heroes. It's about the birth of the SES. We're bringing back the Catoctin Area B reference here.
Interesting.
But it's I know it's totally off topic, but this happens more frequently than we think.
We're tied to Indiana Jones.
Yep.
It's one step away.
It's the North African desert. Everything's there.
I think we ought to do 5 degrees from Catoctin B camp, right? And every episode we have to take 5 steps.
Have to find,
since we don't know Kevin Bacon,
right?
We can't get him on and interview him.
No,
I have inserted here a funny story, and we do have time to riff a little bit more. So with that, speaking of that Mars Climate Orbiter, in another life in December 1999, I was working for an aerospace company, and I was in attendance at the 1999 Planetary Society meeting in Pasadena, California, where hundreds, several thousand people were gathered in the auditorium. And if I recall correctly, they had it timed so that the spacecraft was going to land while everyone was there, and they would turn on a student experiment, which was a microphone on the surface of this spacecraft, and then they were going to hear the ambient noise of Mars. And I may now that I'm thinking about it, it may be a different craft, but nonetheless, there was the same thing where it's like we didn't make it. Oops. It was also my Bill Nye story. I met Bill Nye over at because he was the president, I guess, of the.
How'd that go?
He's a weird guy.
Oh, okay.
He's a weird guy. He is definitely.
I'm not surprised at that.
Interesting character.
Okay.
Yeah. Now that's a little insight into my another life. Okay. So anyway, but getting back, we're not judging. Space is hard.
Space is hard.
As is calculating all that stuff that flies overhead. I mean, to include all those celestial bodies and calculating their positions, it's difficult.
I did once witness 2 physicists mapping out and calculating some satellites and antenna business on a napkin once. It was fascinating. I was like, wow.
Yeah, bar math.
You guys have big brains.
Yeah. It's challenging.
Yep.
Now, before we launch into our wrap-up, there is one more detail that gives glimpse of the genius of this device, and I'm going to turn it over to John once again. And again, we're going to head into some other discussion about it, but as far as a technical device, read this and tell me what you think.
Of special delight to physicists, the moon mechanism uses a special train of bronze gears, 2 of them linked with a slightly offset axis, to indicate the position and phase of the moon. As is known today from Kepler's laws of planetary motion, the moon travels at different speeds as it orbits the Earth. And this speed differential is modeled by the Antikythera mechanism, even though the ancient Greeks were not aware of the actual elliptical shape of the orbit.
Yeah. And so if you can imagine, it's one thing to have a gear and have dead center, but then to calculate having an off-center axis so that it creates some of the wobble in some of the movements of these.
They have tried to model a known unknown, in other words.
Yeah.
They're aware that something's there, but they can't.
They can visualize it, but they don't have it figured out. But they're trying to, and again, this speaks to the idea that this is a prototype and they're trying to figure out these laws, these mathematical laws of the movements of these bodies. And it's just fascinating. But we don't want to sell this device short, and I don't think we have. I mean, even with its inaccuracies, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it truly is. Just building it is amazing.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, have you ever heard the phrase, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence? Usually it's the cop-out for letting all manner of wild tale or theory stand. It is especially used in the Atlantis argument that has been brewing for ages. Some argue there is plenty of evidence to suggest it exists, while others chalk it up to the alleged allegory that Plato meant it to be in the Critias. And that is all well and good until evidence shows up. Now, pulling on this thread, I'm reminded of the ancient city of Troy. It was once only regarded as a legendary setting for the Trojan War in Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey. That is, until Heinrich Schliemann went looking for it in Turkey in the 1870s and found it. Using the poem as a guide, he looked for a likely spot and began digging. And wonderful artifacts from the ancient site were recovered. Now, I'll post a link to the Golden Mask of Agamemnon in the show notes. Although, did you know that actual mask has a provenance issue?
Yes.
They think Schliemann may have it's peppered artifacts in
that would
from
have
other
been
places.
And for clarity's sake, just because it's bothering me, that was found at his Mycenae dig.
Oh, was it the Mycenae one? Was it? Oh, I thought it was at Troy.
Yeah, there are some.
But that kind of points to the issue.
So there are some provenantial issues with his digs, but that really goes back to the fact that he's making up archaeology on the fly because everybody was. He was trying to take a more systematic approach.
Yeah,
but he's a problematic character because he often needed to fund his digs.
Yeah, well,
so there was a little bit of grave robbing going on at the same time.
History's replete with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it was an unregulated field at the time.
Well, and a lot of it wasn't like there was an expert class out there per se in many ways.
So
there was sort of the armchair,
You're touching on some things that I think will be better served in, say, our Mystery Hill / America's Stonehenge episode about archaeology.
Yeah, we can start to lay that.
Yeah,
down
the early years of archaeology have lots of issues because they are coming out of a couple of different traditions, not all of them honorable, and they're inventing this science, as it were. It's a humanity, really, at the time, and it becomes more scientific as it gets closer to our day.
Well,
but that's why there's so much interesting stuff going on in this era about that. Yeah, that
you create process when it no longer stands that a questionable gentleman would come forward and say, I pulled this out of the ground from 6 foot depth. And it's like, well, we're taking your word for it. As opposed to saying,
that's kind of the
I think here's the process. I'm going to write it down. I've got witnesses and so forth.
And I think that's kind of the problem with the Agamemnon mask.
Yeah.
But there's also, like I said, Schliemann, for example, has to fund his digs, so his investors are looking for a return on investment, so that becomes sort of a grave robbery aspect where the stuff gets sold. And then there are pictures of both him and particularly his wife wearing some of the
headdresses,
the jewelry that has been found. Probably wouldn't fly today for a variety of reasons, one of which is now you're contaminating the evidence.
Right. Yeah.
But it was just a very different era where they were making it up as they went and were, doing the best they could in a shady world. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're putting the shady part a little too up front, but I do believe. I mean, it's a mix. I mean, it's like the certainly there were upstanding people that were looking to, understand the past. But then you also had, say, in Egypt, you've got the mummy trade, the elixir of whatever health benefit from ground up mummies just weird things like that.
Even there, Howard Carter, who found the Tutankhamun tomb, he was self-taught. Mm-hmm. But it was taking. He was hewing closer to. I want to be professional about this. I want to try to document everything. Mm-hmm. But he was. I believe I was starting this research. I believe he was university educated, but on something completely different. But he's making it up as he goes too. So all these different personalities are trying their best within the boundaries they find themselves in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Yep, and when we get to the, eventually we'll probably get to the Giza Plateau, and the pyramids also have a problem of provenance with the way they ascribe who it was built for, with some purportedly flimsy evidence based on that same type of thing. You've got an Englishman in the middle of Egypt running out of money and is pressured to find.
And suddenly he finds
and suddenly scribbled on the wall is a cartouche, and off we go into history. But anyway, but getting back to Schliemann, his practices and digging up what he found aside, it's widely accepted that Troy is a representative city that was mentioned in the poems at the time, the epic narratives of the day. So myth in some cases does indeed reflect some aspects of reality. But debate continues, as it should. But we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that many artifacts have very solid provenance, including this strange object from our history, the Antikythera device rescued from obscurity in the Mediterranean Sea. Just a few probing questions. And what does this mean for our ongoing interpretation of ancient people and their cultures? What else lies buried beneath the waves? What has been destroyed, burned, or melted down along the way? We've mentioned the burning of the Library of Alexandria and other catastrophes. Do we really have an accurate picture of what the level of complexity the people of that era were capable of? And I recall recently, back 2019, I went going through the British Museum and realizing that the capabilities of the Etruscans and the pipes in some of these ancient homes. It's amazing. It's a lot more than people may be aware of. All right, so let's wrap this up, and then we'll see what else we want to say about this. There are plenty of baffling OOPARTs we could discuss, and we will save those for another episode. I've got a whole book here on hotly debated different things dug out of the ground.
And some of them are very hotly debated.
They're really hotly debated.
Very hotly debated.
But I think this episode is yet another good setup for a topic that is in the backlog. Now, this topic speaks to large cycles of time that apparently the ancient people were aware of. Perhaps even the Antikythera device was an attempt to make a mobile version of the celestial calendars. Can't carry around Stonehenge in your pocket.
Nope, that would be difficult.
Yeah. In fact, across the planet, cultures are credited with incredible awareness of an elaborate, easy-to-track large timescales in the thousands of years. Plato knew it and referred to it as the Great Year. And in Vedic tradition, it was known as the Yuga cycles. So how does this all come together? Well, only time will tell, of course. So that's what I had prepared today, John. Is there any thoughts that you have about the Antikythera device? And I know you did some reading. Anything you wanted to mention that we didn't?
I'm thinking. I remember. So the reading I was doing, it was very interesting to me because I remember the first time I encountered this, as it was very mysterious, and the questions were, what was it for? What did it do? It seems like in the 30, 40 years since then, it was interesting to me that the theories have solidified more or less around this orrery device. Mm-hmm. They have a much better understanding thanks to modern technology as to what this is. There seems to be a lot less hand-wringing about the idea that such a geared analog computer mechanism would have existed at that time. I think it was a bit more unbelievable back in the late 20th century that such a thing existed. And now people are like...
It's a matter of acceptance,
yeah.
right? It's a matter of mental uptake, frankly.
Well, so I think they're a little surprised they haven't found more geared mechanism from back then, because there's plenty of evidence that the Greeks had these concepts pretty mainstream. It shows up in their stories and their mythology pretty far back.
Yeah.
They weren't talking about an orrery, but I mentioned the automatons.
But the evidence of that type of gearing and mechanism is actually very evident in Rome. For example, there is a push cart that is on evidence that's used to measure miles.
Yeah.
And so imagine this geared device that you push it, like a wheelbarrow, and on the top is this grand, slowly rotating disc that had these
Roman
slots
odometer.
preloaded. Yeah.
So
and
they could place their mile markers. Yeah.
As the wheel turned, they were able to calculate what the distance that they wanted. It would drop a stone into this little bucket. And when you've pushed it as far as you need to go, you'd count up the stones and you go, okay, 2 miles. And then you could tell if you were halfway to the next one or so forth.
And that's a fairly simple device.
It's simple, but it is also, it's
ingenious.
It takes time and build up to get to it.
Right.
That and many other things.
Let me go back to the automatons, in that they appear in Greek myth. There are clockwork beings.
Yeah.
Like the Talos of, I just want to say Cyprus, but I could be wrong about that. But Talos.
Cypriot.
Yeah.
Is it Cypriot?
I don't remember.
Yeah,
we can look that up.
Yeah.
But and Hephaestus, the Greek god of the forge, builds some assistants that are clockwork mechanism. But what's interesting in relation to this device, because they're clockwork, they're geared, but they're a different sort of iteration of what you would use gears for. What's interesting is you mentioned the 14th century, we start to build clocks again in Europe. And then not long after they build clocks, which timekeeping device, much like we're looking at the Antikythera device, they start to build automatons, very complicated ones that could play chess, ones that would create there was a tiger of some sort it was like a moving statue. It would roar. So a bellows would function inside this thing and create noise. It would pretend to maul some poor soldier. All kinds of different devices on that same concept of the gear and the clockwork. So the Antikythera device's existence sort of implies, well, once they figured out gearing.
Yeah.
What else could they build? Why haven't we found that stuff?
What's evocative is the lull between. There's the lull in between. The Antikythera device and then the reemergence of gearing later on, and that's why all I'm poking at is just sort of that nadir, darkness. Dark ages where. There really is, and I would just call it like a dimming of intelligence, right? And you're ascribing it to, I don't have the time, based on having to live and survive. I'm not,
Well, there's a good 1,000 years in there where they're scraping by for existence.
Yeah, they're scraping by,
and they're also focused on very different things. They're focused on religion. The church is saying, okay, if you've got spare time, you should be giving it to us and the glory of God.
Yeah, there's one aspect.
We've got this crusade we can go do.
What could be filling people's time?
Right. But, and they don't want.
But then there's also there's an Enlightenment period which follows the Renaissance period, where there's a rediscovery.
Yeah.
And so again, I'm really setting myself up in all the language for the Yuga cycle discussion, which again points very specifically to and again, to be certain, Plato also referenced this as well.
Yeah.
Plato referenced a dimming of intelligence and a slow decline and a lack of coherence with some of these ideas. There was, and all through time, there's a mourning of the loss of the past, which they saw to be more enlightened.
Well,
and so there's a lot of indications, and that theorists that follow the Yuga cycles, and we'll get into it. I've got all the books in front of me.
I'm just far more inclined to attribute that to societal pressure than I am
a
native intelligence issue.
I know you, but there's also some science that backs it up as well. So that's the other part that I'll be going.
Well, certainly the science about the Romans using lead pipes, for example.
Well, there's that,
and there are other things that again, the societal pressure, but there are things that creep into, say, diet and some other things that aren't helpful in terms of people reaching any of their natural pinnacles, including intelligence, but. I know you don't. I don't believe, and I think there's plenty of others, that people are fundamentally any more smart or dumb than they ever were. People's intelligence tends to be about the same. The real problem is average intelligence is average intelligence. It's
So
you have smart people and dumb people at all times.
We'll have to pick back up on that, and because there's whole books written around that topic, and what might be causing that, which we're going to dig into. What else you got there, John? I think we might be we're running out of topic here. We certainly had a script. I think we covered everything we want to. This device was very interesting. It set up a lot of discussion. It's an OOPART, so we'll be probably mentioning that quite a bit as we move forward. Out of place artifacts and what they mean and where they come from. And there's plenty of others that we could dig into, and we probably will. All right. So let's call this one?
We'll call this one.
All right, we'll call it. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you in another week with another exciting topic.